didn't want to know about the world, I didn't care about the world, I didn't like the music they were making. I guess it all changed when Back for Good came out.
I guess now it's time.
That was one of those things where no matter how much you might have disliked the music, and you heard Back for Good and you were like, OK, I cannot deny this is a great, great song.
It wasn't until the Ivor Novellas, where Gary won all those awards, where people started seeing him as a songwriter. And I think Back for Good probably was the point really where people started to talk about them as a band who could write songs, and Gary as a great songwriter.
Well, I think Take That was his opportunity to kind of prove himself, and also to be, if I'm in a boy band, I just want us to be the biggest and the best boy band in the world.
Gary was proving himself, but occasionally it was to the detriment of the other members. Cracks and frustrations were beginning to show as Gary started to dominate their music.
Wasn't Robbie meant to sing lead vocal on Relight My Fire?
Didn't. I think...
Is that true?
He was.
He did. He went in, and I got a call off the producer late in the night saying, we've had him in all night and it's just not working. And so the next day, I just thought, I'm just going to do it. In defence of everyone else, I should have said to everyone, I'm going to go and do a vocal today. There's a few things in that time which believe me, still come up. And I just went in, I thought, I'll do this, bang, and I did it. I just did it in a way that upset people.
When you decided to call it a day, like, were you involved in that decision?
Well, I was quite involved, I think. It became very obvious that the band had begun to, after Robbie left, start going wrong, I think.
Because it wasn't the band then, it was the band minus somebody, and so it was a different band. I think it felt natural. It felt natural to go, let's call it a day at the top.
The pop group Take That have confirmed they're to split up after 3 years of success, including 7 #1 hits.
And from today is no more.
When Take That split, it was massive. Any celebrity journalist would remember that time like other people talk about remembering President Kennedy being shot. It was a huge story.
I think a measure of Take That's success and fame was when the phone line was set up when they split up. You know, if you think that Newsround can be a Take That special, and John Craven can dedicate 50 minutes to the breaking up of a band, that's when you realise that it's transcended just pop music.
Do you realise that you're one of the few people on Earth who's managed to get better looking as they've got older?
Well, let's face it, in the last 10 years...
You're like a great cheese.
I've not been that attractive in the last 10 years, in all honesty. You know what? The first thing I didn't want to be is I didn't want to be a fat dad.
Yeah.
I just didn't want my kids going, here's mummy and here's daddy. I dreaded it. And you know what? I've got an attractive wife, you know. And when we got married...
Said yeah a little too confidently then.
Yeah, just cool it off. Cool it off.
You know, you didn't even realise you say so.
I know,
I've got a very attractive wife, big time.
That's right. And when I married her, I was a fairly attractive husband, and
No, you were.
I was.
Today sees the release of Gary's first solo single. Robbie's comes out at the end of the month. What's going on? Is this a serious spat or is it all hype?
I think it is. I mean, I think really it's one-sided, though. It is really coming all from Robbie. Gary knows that he's going to be a big, big, big star. Robbie, you know... He'd make a great comedian, a great presenter. He's a good singer. But whether or not he can write good songs still remains to be seen.
How wrong was that?
Yeah.
The problem is that you don't choose to be what people think about you. People just assumed, oh, he's going to be the next George Michael, he's going to have a huge solo career and all the rest of it. It's an odd thing when everything's built up around you that eventually you believe it.
I intend on doing some work and trying to do an album of my own.
I've got my own studio, so I'm writing songs all the time.
Hopefully in the top 5 in America.
I think Gary probably played it wrong. Maybe there was just a slight hint of arrogance at the time. I think he probably thought himself that he would release an album, be #1, be loved. When you have a boy band, there are people there to make up for your weaknesses. When you go alone, you have to fill those roles yourself. He wasn't quite as good when he was on his own in interviews. He wasn't quite as charismatic on stage at that point. I think he probably struggled with the full package.
Coming up next is my special performance from LA of my single So Help Me Girl, live on Top of the Pops.
So help me, girl, you've gone too far, it's way too late.
At that point, I think Britain was tired of the ballad. You were entering laddism. I think Britpop was a huge thing. It was all about being about rock and roll. And then you got Gary releasing another ballad-heavy album, sat behind the piano. And I don't think people wanted that at the time.
But meanwhile, on the other side of the street, something was going on.
This absolute bomb came into the charts, which was Robbie, and the bomb went off and it obliterated Gary because the candle burned brighter for Robbie Williams.
My name is Robbie Williams. This is my band. And for the next 2 hours, your ass is mine.
Gary really received the brunt of Robbie's bitterness over Take That. He really did play a part in forcing Gary into the misery he was in for so many years.
Robbie was always on hand to do a bit of Gary bashing, and Robbie's very funny, and it was good copy.
I regret that Gaz became part of my shtick for too long. Even through, you know, when I used to say bad things about Gaz, I still loved him tremendously. You know, I think that's why I was so hurt, and the bitterness was because I loved that person. You know, my hurt came out in anger and aggression and nastiness. And when that goes away, all that's left is the love.
It was just everywhere. The papers you read, the TV programmes you watched, the radio stations you listened to, everyone was sticking the boot into Gary Barlow.
They call him a national treasure now. He was a national joke then. He was the butt of every weak, terrible line that they had to come up with. They couldn't write him off enough. You know, it was shameful.
Poor Gary, you're thinking. Going down the gym couldn't save his career, and here he
Barlow
is.
never struck me as being clever. He's a nice guy, but he can't sing, he can't dance, and he can't write songs.
Gary, thanks so much for inviting us round to your house today.
Hi, Franz. How you doing? All right? Yeah? GB in the house, getting down with my hose. Yeah? Give me 5, please.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah? Yeah? Thanking you.
I remember presenting Top of the Pops one time, and Gary was there as a solo artist, and things were not going very well for him at all. And both of us standing in the wings while a band were playing and doing their take, and Gary could not have looked more forlorn and more pathetic, I guess, in a really sad way. I don't mean in a horrible way. But at that time, I just thought, wow, it's all over. It really is all over for him.
There's a slight myth that the first album didn't do so great. It was actually the second one. And even if it had probably had a big hit lurking on it, it probably wouldn't have gone through. The media wouldn't have taken it seriously. They were just on to the next thing.
What we knew about him was what was said about him by other people, which is Gary Barlow's finished. Gary Barlow is embarrassing. Gary Barlow cannot write hit songs anymore. That's what we knew, because other people were creating that agenda for him. And he was just there thinking, what do I do now? Where do you go when something like that happens, when it all falls apart?
There's the dog. Hi.
Let me just get him before he jumps.
Hey, get in, you. Get in, you. Get in.
I was interested to meet Gary's mum, a lady who has always shied away from the spotlight and has never spoken on camera before.
Right, come on, we're starving.
Right, OK, who wants tea, who wants coffee?
I was fascinated to hear her take on it all. From Gary first joining the band to coping with the darker times.
This is phenomenal, Margot. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah.
When Gary comes home and says, oh, I'm going to join this band called Take That, like, what was your first thought then?
Right. So what will you be doing with this band?
Did he say, we're going to wear leather and roll around and cover each other in jelly?
Yeah, well, I knew there was a lot of dancing involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought, oh, God.